All right, and we're COMP123. It's week 8, lesson 8, part 1. And what I wanted to say was the same thing I kind of said to everybody just now, which is I'm going to produce a bonus assignment that I'm going to give everyone to do. When I say bonus, it means it's an optional assignment. It's assignment 4. It's already up on Dropbox for you guys. It's worth 10%, so it's worth double an assignment. Okay, now it's not that difficult, but the idea here is that you guys learn about arrays. So this is a little bit of your own learning. You've got the book. You can go back and figure it out, right? Actually, you should know a little bit about arrays already, but here's the two pieces to it. There's two small little programs you have to write for this one, right? The first one is this dice rolling app. So write an app to simulate the rolling of 2 dice and display how many times each result was rolled. Okay, so total for 8 marks functionality. And broken down, the app should use an object of class random once to roll the first die and again to roll the second die. Okay, the sum of the 2 values should then be calculated. All right, each die can show an integer value from 1 to 6, so the sum of the values will vary from 2 to 12. That's the variance, right? So you can't get lower than a 2 result, and you can't get higher than a 12 result when you roll. With 7 being the most frequent sum, and 2 and 12 being the least frequent sums. The figure below shows the 36 possible combinations of the 2 dice. This is pretty simple probability theory, right? Your app should roll the dice 36,000 times. So that's what your app will do. So it's gonna basically distribute your roll, right? 36,000 rolls you're going to do, but you're only going to print it out one time. I don't want you to print out 36,000 times, right? That's crazy, right? Use a one-dimensional array. Here's the array trick, right? Use a one-dimensional array to tally the number of times each possible sum appears. 2 marks, right? And then display the results in tabular format to the console. Tabular format means in a table, right, of numbers, showing how many times each number was rolled. 2 marks. That's the first part. All right, so that's a die roll. The second part, there's 2 parts of this assignment. Basically, if you think about it, it's almost weighted equally, 5 and 5, but this one's probably worth a little heavier, this second part. Part 2, airline reservation system. A small airline has just purchased a computer for its new automated reservation system. You have been asked to develop the new system. You're to write an app to assign seats on each flight of the airline's only plane. Only 10 seats. This plane only has 10 seats. It's a small plane, right? It's a shuttlecraft to the moon. That's what this thing is, right? Display the following alternatives in a menu: 1 for first class, 2 for economy, 3 for exit. Does it sound like the exam? You must use a switch statement and a while loop. Huh? I put that in there again. Isn't that crazy? If the user types 1, your app should assign a seat in the first class section, seats 1 to 5. If your user types 2, your app should assign seats in the economy section, seats 6 to 10 in the back of the plane, where the economy people belong, right? Like me, I'm the economy people. Use a one-dimensional array of type bool, right, to represent the seating chart of the plane. Okay, array, right? Initialize all the elements of the array to false to indicate that all the seats are empty. 2 marks functionality. As each seat is assigned, set the corresponding element of the array to true to indicate that the seat is no longer available, right? 1 mark functionality. Your app should never assign a seat that has already been assigned. When the economy section is full, your app should ask the person if it's acceptable to be placed in the first class section, and vice versa. If yes, make the appropriate seat assignment. If no, display the message, next flight leaves in 3 hours. Okay? Very simple. So there's 2 piece parts to this. Part 1, which is this dice rolling app you're going to build. There's 2, so you're going to build 2 separate programs, applications. I don't want this in one project. So 2 little projects you're going to zip up separately, and you're going to send up to Dropbox. Okay? This is your bonus assignment. It's optional if you do this thing, right? And if you do, has everyone signed in, by the way? If you do this bonus assignment, then it'll add on to your mark at the end. It will not replace a mark. It'll add. All right. So this is all good. This one. Questions? So this is going to give you an opportunity for you to study arrays, figure out how it's done, and then kind of come up with the assignment. Yeah. I don't need you to post to the GitHub. This is strictly I want you to upload this to, and neither is the other one. I didn't ask the other one for it either, right? For a couple of reasons. I gotta control what you guys are doing because there's a lot of stuff going on, and I've got some feedback that it's too much. So it is what it is. I'm smiling, and we're gonna keep moving, right? So again, so these two piece parts. There's no GitHub here. All it is upload it to eCentennial, and away we go. All right. If you're late though, like if you're beyond the 2-week period, doesn't make any sense because it's a bonus assignment, right? But I'm gonna still dock 10% every day because I have to. It's got to be some kind of deadline. Okay, so that's this one. That's 10% of your mark. This one here. I'm guessing people will do this one, right? Here's the second one. Now this is one that's related to what we're doing today and tomorrow, right? The second one is called assignment 5. It's file input, output, and exception handling that we're going to be studying. We're talking about that today and tomorrow. And it's going to be due 2 weeks from now again. Why? So that way you can decide which one you want to do first, right? You want to do one or the other one? It's up to you. So using C# and the Visual Studio IDE, you write 2 small programs. Actually, it's only 1 small program. That's incorrect. 1 small program to demonstrate understanding of the file I/O. I was going to do 2, but you know what? This is enough. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to create a file of student grades. Okay? You're going to create a program that stores student grades in a text file and displays them to the console. Right? You're going to create the grade file because there is no grade file. You're going to put it together. It's like a sample file that you're going to put together. We're going to talk about how to do that over the next couple days. Right? And then you're going to allow the user to load the grade file and display its contents to the console through, hey, use of a menu. Right? 1, display the grades. 2, exit. Right? You must use a switch statement and a while loop. All right? Again. Right? I'm getting you to do that over and over again so you get really good with it. So when we do another exam like that, you've done this a bunch of times. Right? When the display grades option is selected, ask the user for the name of the file to load. So file to load. Your code should include exception handling. We're going to talk about that today to ensure that if a grade file doesn't exist, the error no such file is output to the console, and the user should then be redirected back to the menu. If the file does exist, the student data will be loaded into a string array. Each element of the array will contain data for 1 student. So my thinking is this. Do your bonus assignment first. Get good with arrays. Do your second assignment second, right? The second assignment is only worth 5%. The bonus assignment is worth 10%, right? So I think it's worthwhile doing, right? When the grade file is loaded, the entry should be displayed in the following format: last name, first name, ID, class, and grade. And if you notice, I've given you some sample data for what it should look like. Okay? Well, that's it. Those are the 2 assignments. This is only worth 5%, and it's due same time. Friday, March 20th at midnight. Questions around these 2 things? Not difficult stuff. Again, I'm trying to make up for some of the people who had issues with the exam. And again, if you didn't have issues with the exam, bonus, right? Any other questions or concerns around this one? Okay, so let's proceed today. I want to talk about this new section we're going to work through. We're not going to forget our inheritance in classes. We're going to continue to use them. And that's why it's important for you to have done them. And as we go forward, the schedule is as follows. This week is file I/O and exception handling. Next week, I'm going to introduce UI, like the Windows Forms UI. We're going to talk about that next week for the first time. And then a little bit of control the week after. So UI for a couple weeks. And then we're going to get into link. Right? And then after that, we're going to finish off. Let me see what the schedule looks like for a second. It's actually following the schedule in your outline, right? So we're not doing anything outside of the outline. We're going to follow the outline exactly. So the way it works is this. Next week, week 9, UI controls. Week 10 is going to be UI event handling. Week 11 is data access with link, and so is number 12. In there with data access with link, I'm probably going to throw in lists, because we need to understand how to do lists, which is almost like an expanded or it's like arrays plus, right? Once you know arrays, then lists are easy, right? And then lesson 13 is going to be kind of intro to ADO, and we're going to do an exam review, right? And then finally, lesson 14, which is the final, we're going to do an exam, and I'm probably planning to do this because we're in a day 1, day 2 cycle here. Day 1 being today, Tuesday, day 2 being tomorrow, Wednesday, right? So probably what we're going to do is both days we're going to do piece parts of the exam, right? I'm going to do multiple choice and all that kind of stuff on day 1, right? So that would be on the Tuesday, and then I'll do your practical on the Wednesday, okay, for the exam. The exam is pretty heavily weighted though, so that's why I got to prepare you for all that stuff, and that's why we're doing all these things. And I'll do my best when we talk about on the review day, so that's like the previous week, week 13, I'll do my best to make sure that I meet with as many people as I need to talk about problems with that they're encountering. I'm also going to think about, I'm working with Professor Narendra to work out some tutorial sessions that I might run on Wednesdays, okay? So it'll be bonus tutorial sessions for you guys that I'm going to be running. There's some free rooms. I'm looking for some rooms to do them in, and it'll be optional if you want to show up or not. Where I kind of appear, I'm there, and if it'll be for it could be for everybody. It could be for 2 people. It could be for 1 person, right? Where I'll go over stuff in tutorial about things that, in addition to what we're doing here. So we'll talk about issues that you're having problems with. We'll go over some assignment things. We'll talk about those things. Okay. Any questions around this? Between now and the final, because the final, if you look at the course outline really quickly, I'm just going to open it up here. I followed it as much as possible. Actually, what I did was I injected an additional test between the midterm and the beginning, right? To kind of cut that midterm to 20%. Otherwise, that midterm would have been killer for you guys. It would have been worth 30%, right? I want to do the same thing for the final, right? If I do another little test before the final, right, and I subtract 10% out of there, that means the final's only be worth 30%, right? I don't want to make the final a killer. This is like everything you've done, 40% of the whatever at the end it's your final is worth 40% of your mark. It's crazy, right? It's heavy, and to me, I understand why it's got to be like that, but I'd like to pull another 10% out of there and put it into a smaller test that you guys can do fairly good at. Something like mid-chapter, midway through. So that's my plan, right? I will send a notification about this going forward. I know some people, they follow the outline 100%. I am too, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it easier for you by pulling some additional stuff out. Because remember, you guys did, if I was to go with the way things are written here, the midterm would have been 30, right? And that other test you did, the 10% test, would have been included in that midterm. So it means instead of 10%, if you guys had only 50% of the midterm, some people have struggled, right? Then you would have been like, it would have been 15%, right? So, I mean, I guess I could have done a heavier exam or a heavier makeup assignment, but it's crazy, right? So for me, I'm concerned about the final. Some of you are strong in certain things and not so strong in other things. And I want to be able to train you so that when we get to the final, you're good. And I'm going to try and make it as straightforward as possible without my injection. So I'm not going to give you something to write or adjust, because I found that some people, I've never seen that kind of style before, right? So when you look at it, you're like, oh my God, it's more difficult for me to modify somebody else's code than to write my own, which is in many ways true. But it also means that my practical's got to be really, really tight. That means like you can only do a couple things, and I got to test you on the things I got to test you on. So my thinking is it's probably going to be something to do with a UI, right? The practical piece where you're going to write some kind of some kind of Windows form, because that's easy to do. And you're going to be coming out with something that you can finish in an hour and a half. Because again, we only have, even though there's 2-hour sessions here, we only practically only have about an hour and a half before you finish and hand things in, right? So even your multiple choice piece, and that's why I like to break it down too, I'm probably going to weight them as evenly as I can. I don't know if I can make, and again, I got to go with the other professor that's doing this as well. So we're going to have to, kind of work together closely on this one. Like for example, if he makes his, and I'm talking about Professor Jake, right? If he makes his multiple choice piece only 25% of the final, then I might have to balance mine a little bit as well, right? So you might see that the first part on day 1 might only be worth 25% of the 30 marks, right? Which isn't that much. And then the final, your practical, will be weighted heavier, right? So I'm hoping I can balance them off so they're even. And that way, if you're pretty good at terms, multiple choice, your concepts, and you're pretty good at your practical knowledge, then you're going to do okay. Because that means you're only going to be 15% of your practical knowledge is going to be your practical test, not 40. That's crazy, right? And it won't be 20 because I'm going to pull that extra 10% out is what I'm thinking. So it makes it easier. Again, my job here is not to fail anybody. My job is to make sure you guys know stuff when you leave this and go to part 3, right? But at the same time that you're all successful. Any questions or concerns around that? If you do, if you don't want me to do that, if you want me to make the test 50%, I'll do it. It's up to you, right? I just think it's crazy, right? Right. Okay, let's move on. I'll stop recording this at this place. And this is just talks about the tests and your final exam and a little bit of what's going on in the second half, right? And then we'll move on to the next piece.